data management and governance in digital transformations, AI in healthcare and the world of SAP, as well as things ERP software vendors don't want you to know. Those are just a few of the topics we're going to cover here in episode 197 of Transformation Ground Control.
Welcome to Transformation Ground Control. Ground Control. The podcast that covers everything related to digital transformation. This podcast features technology agnostic and international discussions related to digital strategy, software selection, implementation, change management, business process optimization, and everything else you need to know to make your digital transformation project successful. Whether you're embarking on an ERP implementation, supply chain transformation, or any other business or digital transformation, this podcast is for you. Now, here's your host, Eric Kimberling.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Ground control is the major fun.
Hello, welcome to the Transformation Ground Control podcast. This is the weekly podcast that covers everything related to digital transformation, including digital strategy and people, process, and technology. It's also a tech agnostic view, an independent agnostic view of the world of digital transformation. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world reach their third stage of digital transformations. And joining me, as always, is Darian Chwialkowski. Darian, thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, great show planned. We're excited for some of the stuff we're going to get to today. We're going to get to some social media questions that we've received to start off. And we're also going to get into some newsworthy topics, including the fact that AI transcription tools are making waves in healthcare, as well as SAP's recently launched AI features in the world of SuccessFactors, their HCM or human capital management, HR technology. So we'll talk quite a bit about AI here in our newsworthy topics. And then later in the show, we'll have our guest. Our interview guest is going to be Dr. Imad Syed from PiLog. He's the co-CEO of a company called PiLog, and he's going to be on talking about data management and governance in digital transformation. So that's going to be a great conversation. And then we'll also talk about things that ERP software vendors don't want you to know, but you need to know. So we're going to get to that later in the show as well. So lots to cover here today. But before we jump in, let's dive into some of the social media questions we've received, Darian.
Yeah, so this first one is from your video, Death of ERP. And this question or comment is, well, given the circumstances, what solution do you propose for ERP functional consultants? How should they cope with these dynamically changing environments?
Yes, as far as like changing technologies, is that what they're asking? Like the technology itself changing?
Yeah,
I mean, it's hard because, you know, the interesting thing about ERP that's always been sort of a point of tension or conflict, I guess you'd say, is when you're in the world of ERP consulting, you on one hand have to understand how ERP systems work across, you know, multiple functions and modules and things like that. But at the same time, a lot of these ERP systems like SAP and Oracle and some of these others are so big and complex that you have to specialize. You have to go deep in one area within that ERP system. So it is really hard to keep up. You know, you can't be an expert or knowledgeable of everything in every system, you know, even one system, let alone every system that's out there. So I think it's a matter of, you know, certainly keeping your certifications up to date, but also just continuing to get experience and hands-on experience with the newer versions of the systems. I mean, that's really might sound like an oversimplification or a no-brainer, but that's really the best way to go about it.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. The second question today is actually from TikTok, but it's from a clip from the YouTube video about the cloud hidden costs, which we covered last week in both the segment and some questions. We have another comment about that, and this one is, but do you get updated softwares and features that are current and relevant to your industry rather than managing a 20-year-old system that cannot support growing business needs?
Yeah, and that is one of the benefits of cloud. And I think the point of the video is that there are hidden costs and unexpected costs associated with cloud systems, is not necessarily suggesting or just being dismissive of the fact that there is business value in cloud systems. That is absolutely true. So I don't question the value of cloud. I think there is a lot of value. It's just making sure you understand the cost side of the equation too. And that's really where I was going with that. But yes, there are certainly tangible and intangible benefits as it relates to innovation and upgrades and being on the most recent version of a system versus having to maintain an old system that's outdated, that's holding you back from growth. So those are certainly benefits, but you also want to look at and understand what the costs are, because those long-term costs can really add up for organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. One question I have with that, Eric, is how many companies going into maybe a cloud upgrade actually know all of the costs behind it? Is there a lot of the times where you've seen companies we've already signed to the cloud, they're implementing it, and now they're like, wait, where are these costs coming from?
Yeah, that is very common, where organizations don't fully understand, how much pricing power they've given up, because it's one thing to sign an initial cloud contract and it gives you some predictable costs for the coming year or maybe the next couple of years. But over time, there's usually clauses in your contracts that say that, there's certain kickers that are going to kick in to escalate the cost of your cloud environment. So whether it's through additional users or adding additional users, whether it's transaction volumes that kick you up to a higher level or a higher subscription plan, there's all these things that can cause the price to go up. And vendors typically have in their contracts, a price increase, annual price increase baked into, where they can sort of arbitrarily decide on their own how much they're going to raise the annual subscription fees each year. And you usually don't have much of a say in it. And the switching cost is so high. I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to switch cloud providers just because your cloud provider has jacked up the price, 10 or 15% or whatever it is year over year. At some point you might, but it's makes it very difficult. And I think it creates some dynamics where organizations feel a little hamstrung or a little bit held hostage by their software vendors. And I know that's part of what we're going to get to later in the show as well. We're going to talk about some of the things that software vendors don't necessarily want you to know, but you need to know. And that's one of the things we talk about in that clip later today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, some great questions from the audience. If you guys have any other questions, of course, you can leave them on any of our platforms and we'll be sure to answer them on any of our podcasts.
Yes, great questions. Thanks for bringing those up.
Yeah, absolutely. But we're going to get into our first newsworthy topic of the day. This first one is about AI transcription tools that are making waves in healthcare. But the catch is, it's not all of them are in a good way. So take Whisper, for example. This is an AI-powered transcription tool that is widely used for medical transcriptions. Studies show that Whisper doesn't just transcribe, it can hallucinate, adding fictional phrases or even inventing non-existent medications, the worst part of this is that sometimes it also deletes the original audio, so there's no way for medical staff to check whether the transcriptions that it's making is accurate. So this is obviously a huge risk for doctors that are basing treatments on AI-generated transcriptions, because if it's not transcripting or showing what it is transcripting correctly, then it's obviously something that they can't regulate. This issue note isn't just limited to Whisper, but that's just an example. And lots of researchers are warning that hallucinations are common across different AI models in the industry right now. So with this, Eric, AI is obviously very exciting, but this is something that could harm patients or not obviously be a great thing for patients. So how serious do you think these AI hallucinations are as a risk in healthcare, especially in medical transcription, when people are seeing what, they're reading what they are hearing, basically?
Yeah, I think the main thing here is that you have the issue of hallucinations, which is an issue in any industry, but the stakes are a lot higher in healthcare. Obviously, if you're prescribing the wrong medication or misdiagnosing someone based on an AI hallucination, that just sort of underscores, at least in the near future, foreseeable future, it underscores how important human intervention is, or human collaboration with AI in human management of AI, how important that is. I mean, you still have to use your brain, and the human piece of it has to sort of validate and augment what you're getting from AI. So I would hope that in the healthcare industry, people aren't just blindly following the recommendations of AI, or not at least double checking what AI is telling them. It can be a way to give them a starting point, but really humans need to validate that, and you still need doctors and professionals that can catch some of the nuances or mistakes that AI may miss.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, I wanted to talk about the future of AI in healthcare. Obviously, there's right now the point of trustworthiness in the AI is probably lower than what they want. So how do you think that will develop in the future? Do you think that they will be able to gain more trustworthiness, or do you think it'll always be obviously a need for some human oversight, but will that decline in the future?
Yeah, I think AI is only going to get better and smarter, as it learns more and as you train it, and as these large AI models continue to be built and augmented with new information and new learnings. I think it is going to get better, but it's hard to imagine, at least in the foreseeable future, it's hard to imagine a scenario where AI is good enough to where you don't need any sort of human intervention or interaction or oversight, whatever you want to call it, collaboration, whatever it is you want to call it. You need to have that still. So I think that's really the key here. It will get better, but you still need that human touch or that human intervention for sure.
For sure. Yeah, I agree. And with obviously with healthcare, because has a lot of regulatory bodies over it. And so with this and using AI in healthcare, how do you think that the regulations are going to change over time, or how do you see that impacting AI in healthcare?
Well, unfortunately, all it's going to take is one, mistake, or catastrophe that's related to some oversight with AI or some misuse of AI or whatever it is. And that's probably going to trigger a certain amount of government involvement, more so than it already has. So I think there's probably regulations coming with AI, somewhere in the world. I don't know if it'd come out of the EU first or the US or whatever, but it seems like those are usually the two, the ones that are first to regulate things. It seems like, or the EU or the US. So be curious to see where it goes, but I do think there's probably more government involvement in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a super interesting topic. When I read that, I was a little bit shocked. I feel like we don't hear about AI making mistakes all the time necessarily. We just talk about the advancements of AI. So I thought this was a really interesting article in that way.
Yeah, especially as it relates to people's health and safety and all that stuff. It's that's where it gets real dicey and interesting for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. But we're going to switch gears here and talk about SAP and its AI. So we'll stay in AI, but we're going to switch to SAP's recently launched new AI, and specifically, and it's SuccessFactors HCM suite to improve workforce planning and help fill skills gaps. So these updates include a central hub that collects skills information from various sources, allowing companies to better track and develop their employees' skills. Key improvements include that AI assistant Joule will now help with onboarding and can answer payroll questions, and tools from recent SAP's WalkMe acquisition, which streamline common tasks for employees. Analysts say that SAP's new focus on skills development may be in a response to Workday or trying to compete with Workday a little bit more. And SAP hopes with these tools will help departments like IT to identify skills gaps. So Eric, with this, how does SAP's new approach to skills development compare to Workday's approach specifically? And what has been around longer, and what do you see the development of the future looking like for that?
Well, I think the beauty of AI in a lot of ways, it's sort of, I don't know if it's good news or bad news for software vendors, but it sort of creates I think it's sort of neutralizing or creating a level playing field in a lot of ways, because, if you think about it, let's just look at the old user interfaces of say, SAP and Workday. I would say Workday probably had an advantage just in terms of usability and user experience and things like that, just the ease of use. And that's a broad generalization. Not everyone's going to agree with that. If you're an SAP shop and you're used to SAP, you might actually find that SAP is easier to use. But if I'm just looking objectively at the two legacy systems, I mean, Workday's got a slicker, more modern interface, in my opinion. But the thing with AI is now it sort of diminishes the importance of the old school way of looking at user experience in terms of menus and how easy it is to navigate. Now with AI, it sort of creates another layer of interaction with your employees to where, like you said, they can go on there and just get payroll or benefit information just by asking a question conversationally, rather than having to go figure out which screen to go to or whatever. So I think in the case, if you agree with my opinion that Workday has a better user interface in general, but now SAP has these AI tools, and let's just assume that Workday also has similar AI tools, which I know they do. A lot of these vendors are investing heavily in AI. But now all of a sudden it sort of neutralizes, creates more of a level middle playing field, if you will, because of that. So I think in this case, it would probably help SAP compete better with Workday, given that it sort of masks, AI can help mask the cumbersome nature of the S4HANA or the SuccessFactors user interface.
Yeah, that's a good point. Another question I have too is when it comes to third-party tools for companies, does SAP's Central Skills Hub, could that lead to companies relying less on third parties in the future?
I think so. Yeah, I think it sort of cuts out the middleman and allows people to have that self-service direct access to the information they need. So absolutely, I think that does potentially reduce the need for third parties in the future.
And by getting rid of third parties, does that increase people's risks as far as vendor lock-in goes?
Yeah, it does. I mean, now all of a sudden, in this case, if you're investing heavily in S4HANA and SuccessFactors and other SAP products, including their AI tools and whatnot, you are getting in deeper with one vendor. And, the deeper you get in with one vendor, the harder it is to ever get out of it. So, or the harder it is to sort of balance that out. Or if part of, in the future, you find that part of your organization isn't a good fit with the system you're using, it's harder to switch, at that point. So that's what vendor lock is. So yes, you do have to be aware of, what the downside risks or potential consequences are of that vendor lock, in addition to the fact that, to balance out the fact that you are also getting some business value and business benefits out of those technologies.
Yeah, for sure. One more question I have on this is, they talked about helping the specific departments like IT. How valuable is SAP's strategy for helping IT departments quickly upskill or retrain staff to keep up new technologies with, how fast technology is evolving nowadays? Is that a huge part that's going to affect the future here?
Yeah, I think so. I think, those tools can help. It's going to help and require IT departments to keep up, with their skills and just understanding how these new technologies work.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, super interesting. I feel like every week we talk about a vendor and some sort of new AI product that they have released or upgraded in their software. So it's been really interesting to see how it's all developed over time, what softwares are adding what.
Yeah, super interesting stuff. And we're going to continue down the thread of not talking about AI necessarily, although I'm sure we'll touch on AI in this next segment. But we're going to have a conversation here talking about data management and governance in digital transformations, which AI certainly does play a role in data management, data governance, but data management and governance can also influence or affect how you can potentially leverage AI in the future, as well as business intelligence and analytics and just, the information you get out of your system on a day-to-day basis. So we're going to talk about data management and governance and digital transformations. We're going to have Dr. Imad Syed on the show. He's the co-CEO of a company called PiLog, and he'll be on the show here chatting about that topic with me. And then later in the show, we'll talk about things that the ERP software vendors don't want you to know, but that you need to know. So be sure to stick around for that. We've got a lot more to cover. We're going to be back with more Transformation Ground Control. We'll be right back.
I'm excited to announce the release of our 2025 Digital Transformation Report. It's available now on the Third Stage Consulting website, www.thirdstage-consulting.com. This report gives you an unbiased, technology-agnostic insight to help you optimize your organization's projects for success. Get your copy today using the QR code in front of me or on our website.
Are you looking for ways to promote your product or service to enterprise technology decision makers and influencers throughout the world, like the ones who listen to this podcast? Major Tom Productions creates media, events, and influencer marketing for B2B technology providers. Our productions are exciting, educational, disruptive, and effective. Most importantly, they create results. Our content is unlike any other in this industry, engaging, influential, and trusted by technology buyers and influencers throughout the world. Each month, our productions reach hundreds of thousands of targeted buyers and decision makers who trust and engage with our honest and tech-agnostic content. With long-tail viral results and engagement with our content, Major Tom Productions provides a way to reach your target market and create awareness, calls to action, and a connection with potential customers. So collaborate with us today. Learn how we can feature your product or service on podcasts such as Transformation Ground Control, Journey to S/4HANA, and Journey to Dynamics 365. We can also feature your brand on our YouTube channel called Digital Transformation with Eric Kimberling, which boasts over 100,000 subscribers and over 2 million video views per year. You can also participate in our in-person events, including our Digital Stratosphere Conference. Contact us today to learn more. We can tailor a marketing campaign that works for you. We look forward to helping more people learn more about and become engaged with your brand.
Hello, welcome back to episode number 197 of Transformation Ground Control. This is the tech-agnostic podcast that covers everything related to digital transformations, including digital strategy and people, process, and technology aspects of transformation. So thank you for being here today. You can find new episodes of the show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting, and we're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys. And we help clients select and implement enterprise technologies. And one of the things that we help clients do as part of their digital transformations is we help them with data management, data governance, which is the next topic we're going to cover here in this segment. We're going to get into a conversation here with Dr. Imad Syed, who is the co-CEO of PiLog, and we're going to chat and dive into this whole thread of data management and data governance. So, Dr. Syed, thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much, Rick. I'm excited to be here, and I'm going to just believe that we're going to have a great discussion.
Yes, I'm very excited for today's discussion. You and I had a chance to meet at a conference a few weeks ago, and we had the idea of, hey, let's talk about this topic here in our podcast, and we'd be excited to have you here and excited to collaborate with you on this. But before we jump in and start asking you all these questions I have for you about data management, data governance, tell us a little bit about yourself and about PiLog, if you don't mind.
Myself, Imad Syed, I started my journey as a data engineer or a system engineer at PiLog nearly 22, 23 years ago. I stopped counting that because it has been, very long, very long. It makes me feel that I'm old, but I'm becoming wiser every day because data is something that I loved from day one. And I knew that the future is going to be built on data. And without data, I mean, you cannot even take a breath these days. No enterprise can even take a deep breath without talking about data.
Right.
So I started as a system engineer and then grown up into an architecture role as well as the director of information technologies. So I now currently handle both the portfolios, which is the products, all the products, data products that we are building, the governance products, as well as I'm looking after the executive role of PiLog as well, along with my other colleagues because I'm the co-CEO of PiLog Group.
Gotcha.
So I'm based out of Dubai. Mostly, you can find me in Middle East, hopping in and out between the other countries of Middle East. But I also frequently visit India, which is our labs, data labs, as well as the R&D labs here, where the magic happens.
Right. So your boots on the ground, seeing all this stuff in real time, and very interesting. So tell us a little bit about, if you don't mind, just tell us a little bit about maybe a little bit more about PiLog and what you guys do as a company there.
Yeah. See, my existence is because of PiLog, because that's what I feel, because PiLog has been in the market for nearly 29 years. So next year, probably in next 2 years, we'll turn 30 years in the market. And that's actually long standing for any organization to survive. But we have been waiting for our turn because those days when we started with the data practices, data governance, data quality, nobody used to even give any attention to us. In fact, leave about attention. They were not even interested to listen to anything that we were talking about. But there were some great minds, great organizations who thought that probably this could be the next big thing. And they started giving us, that kind of attention. And especially in Middle East, we tasted our success. We originated out of South Africa, Centurion. And then in 2001, we moved to Middle East. Our chairman being a very, very visionary person, he said that, guys, if we can't do something in this part of the world, let's go to the Middle East where we have deep pockets, and Middle East has got always deep pockets. So we started our stuff. But what we also did is we said, since we have seen and experienced the market without any practices and without any quality, we went back to ISO and we said that let us bring in some of the standards of the data quality or information quality, and we started contributing to that. So on one side we were actually talking about the standards to the end users and to the implementers, but the other side we were also contributing in developing those standards. And that was actually the wonderful thing for us, because whatever we were learning from the market, we used to go back and we say that probably this is something that you need to include as part of the standard. And today, if you look at it, we have invested it heavily into ISO 29000 to 8000 to 745, a lot of standards. So if you have to summarize it, PiLog is a data quality and governance company implementing the practices as per ISO standards, and that is how I summarize PiLog.
Right. Well, that's great. Well, it sounds like you're the perfect person to have this conversation to talk about data management, data governance, since that's really what we're honing in on here today. But before we sort of dive into some of these questions around data management and governance, what can you tell us about? Could you sort of give us just a high level starting point of what, why data management and data governance is so critical to the success of ERP projects? And maybe you could start by, if you don't mind, maybe to describe how data management and governance is different than just data migration.
Yeah. See, now let me tell you something that I don't like the data management term itself, Eric, because anybody can manage the data.
Right.
Any practice can manage it. What I like is data quality management. I like it because unless you see a quality in the data, I mean, you are not at all managing it, it is managing itself. So when I say data quality management, and that's the foundation for any organization, any data that is not in shape, from all the 12 dimensions perspective, bringing it into the right practice, that's the data quality establishment or management. But what is the practice? What is the authority? What is the know-how or the rules around that is actually the data governance. So many a times we see a lot of people, even still, they are confused between data management and data governance. Yeah, we are doing it, but have you really implemented a solution that governs with the right rules and with the right authority over the data elements? Probably yes or no. I mean, there are a lot of organizations who differ with this. But I would like to say that it's a data quality and the governance. I mean, and data management probably at a higher level, looking into various things around that, but it is actually the data quality and data governance. And PiLog is best with both of them. Data quality is something that, maybe the qualitative data for you could be different from me. So it is a fit for purpose kind of, data. And that's where the data quality comes in. And there's a beautiful definition in ISO 8000 that the data that fits the requirements is the data quality. A simple data that fits the requirements. So it is fit for purpose. And many people feel that, sorry, you do not have all this personal data, so data quality is bad. But probably the fit for purpose is different than what exactly is required for that use case. So each use case would have a different data quality, and that's what we believe. That's where we bring in a lot of taxonomies, a lot of templates, and we say that same asset, you classify it as a product, you have a different data quality requirement, whereas as an asset, it has got a different data quality requirement. And that's where we are a little bit different from what generic statements states about data quality.
Interesting. So yeah, that is interesting. So you're sort of putting a different spin on a little bit of a more vague term like data management. You're talking about quality management. I like how you talk about fit for purpose too. I want to come back to that a little bit too. I'm going to ask some more follow-up questions on that. But before I continue on with a few more questions, just want to say hello to everyone joining here today. Thank you for dropping in the chat where you're joining from. We have a lot of people joining from several people from India, Saudi Arabia, Dubai, England, Johannesburg, South Africa. We've got people all over the world here today. Dubai, more people from Dubai, even Wisconsin in the U.S., South Dakota in the U.S. So people joining from all over. So thank you for being here today. So as we get into this, here's a quick comment I'll share with you from Shukat on LinkedIn. It says data quality management has 12 dimensions. Governance is around it. Both complement each other. And so I want to come back to that as well. That's a great point. So when we start thinking about data governance within our overall digital strategy, I mean, how should we be? Do you have any tips on how to be thinking about data management and how you can start building that into your overall digital transformation strategy or your ERP strategy?
Yeah. See, the data governance can start in two stages. One could be a green field, or one could be a brown field. In both the cases, you have a different approach. If it is, if you're sitting with a lot of legacy data, it's a headache, but also that what kind of patterns are there as part of your data so that you can establish the governance rules. But if you are starting on a clean state, you can go with, the benchmarks, whatever those benchmarks that are available. So both of them have got different opportunities, different, purposes of it. But when I personally believe, and in fact, we have experienced over 2 decades that any data that is coming out of non-governed or ungoverned systems, that is what is actually creating a lot of nonsense. So it's not, you could have a great data governance capabilities, but any data that is feeding into it from a non-governed solution, which does not match the rules that has to, then it is a mess. And when does that happen? Eric, you know it very well. We talk about M&A, mergers and acquisition, one of
Right.
the worst case to handle, because each one have got probably a different business problem, probably a different use case, probably different systems, and you are trying to marry both of them. Both does not come from the same world. Both have got different practices, and establishing governance rules by controlling both of them is a difficult thing. Whereas data migrations, I mean, you were just mentioning also about data migrations. I say that data migrations are the best opportunity for any organization to correct the course of action with regards to their data strategy. And if they miss that opportunity, I don't think that how often that would come, because I do not see these digital transformations happening in less than 10 years. So you are going to miss out that opportunity for at least a decade or decade and a half. And don't miss out on that opportunity. If you really want to bring in governance, that's the best time for you.
Right. Yeah. And you bring up a good point too, which is that, you can clean your data, you can get it perfect the way it should be, but it's us humans that end up creating
Yeah,
nonsense, as you put it.
absolutely.
It's us that
Absolutely.
messes up the data and makes it inaccurate. And then
Absolutely.
you start thinking about, how does that affect my reporting and my analytics, my AI efforts? If I'm trying to incorporate
Right.
generative AI
Right.
or learn
Right.
language
Right.
models, all that stuff, or large language models,
Yeah.
then you're not gonna be able to do it, if you don't have good data governance to keep the data accurate and to really treat it as an asset that needs to be focused on quality, as you mentioned.
Right, right, right. Let me tell you one interesting fact there. I have seen a lot of organizations, maybe 3 out of 10 organizations, they said that we have a digital dashboards. Okay, I said, fantastic. You go into their digital boardroom, you would see a lot of dashboards. Okay, where's the data coming from? Yeah, it's our transactional data. You see so many transactions, but they have not implemented the right master data and metadata, and they are believing those transactions that are generated out of inaccurate master and metadata, and they are making decisions on that, and they call themselves that we are digitally transformed. Yes, if you have not established the foundation, which is the master and the metadata, then how can you actually build any reporting engine around that? And you are making all those decisions based on your data, but it is skewed. It's not accurate. So that's why we always say that have metadata as the centric thing, like very simple thing. Let's suppose we have a personal data, but your weight, I mean, weight of a person is not mentioned as kg or lb, and it says 73. What is it? So without metadata, it's nothing. I mean, 73 makes no sense at all. Or a height, or if it does not have the right currency, you say, yeah, $300, but which bucks? I mean, which currency? So the metadata is important. And once you have that metadata, then it brings the value to it. And that's what ISO 8000 talks about. And the master data is built on the foundation of metadata, and transactions are built out of the combination of meta and the master data. People miss that thing. They say that, okay, let me just clean all the transaction data. Let me see how many transactions I have done, how many orders I have generated, how much spend I have done. But what is your classification? Your classification itself is wrong. So I mean that still surprises me. I'm sure people are learning, but again, these digital transformations make no sense unless you actually correct the foundation.
Right. We're here chatting about data management and governance and digital transformations. We've got a lot more to cover, but first we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control. Could you whisper in my ear? I recently published my first book. It's called The Final Countdown: Strategies to Reach the Third Stage of Digital Transformation. And I wrote this book because I really wanted to find a concise way to share some of my knowledge around digital strategy and how to get started on a digital transformation journey. So in this book, I cover 3 different sections. I cover the people, process, and technology aspects of transformation, with the idea that it's meant to be a starting point, a launching pad for organizations and team members that are going through digital transformations. So I encourage you to buy this book. You can get it electronically, you can get it paperback, or you can get it in hard copy as I'm holding here in front of you. You can get it by going to thefinalcountdown.com. You can also search for it on Amazon if you shop at Amazon. Otherwise, just go to thefinalcountdown.com. Love to hear your feedback on this book as well. So I hope you check it out and hope you enjoy.
Interested in working for a company that truly values your unique skills and experience? Here at Third Stage, we don't hire based on resumes alone. We look at the full candidate, experience, and willingness to provide excellent service for our clients. Within a technology independent and agnostic consulting firm, you have the opportunity to learn across industries with a diverse group of clients. Our consultants also have the opportunity to diversify their portfolio and learn across technology systems. If you're interested in joining a high-growth entrepreneurial organization, please reach out to us at work@thirdstage-consulting.com.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 197. My name is Eric Kimberling here at Darian Chwialkowski. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. You can also keep up with new episodes and see all the past episodes you might have missed, all at that same website, transformationgroundcontrol.com. So thanks for listening in. We're here with Dr. Syed talking about data management, data governance in digital transformations. Right, here's a comment from Tola on YouTube, says, LOL, cute yet not accurate data. Yep, that hits home. So it sounds like Tola can relate to that concept there. That's really interesting. Now, what are some of the other data related challenges that companies face when they're implementing a new, say, enterprise technology system like an ERP system or other type of enterprise-wide technology? What are some of the common challenges that you see?
See, one of the common challenges is that they don't know the scope of the data that they must carry forward. And always, Eric, what they do is they take all the baggage with them. And that's why if you now look at SAP's Rise with SAP program, they say that drop your baggage, don't bring all your legacy, don't bring your, keep it clean. Core should be clean. And that's the biggest challenge. And what is it? Because that data has been created a decade ago. And who created, we don't know. Why it was created, we don't know. But we want to carry that baggage into future. How can it be future? I mean, it has spoiled your past already, and you want to carry the data set forward. So the scope is important, what you want to take it forward. And that's the reason we have defined a criteria. And we are almost, I think, 9 out of 10 of our projects, we are part of the data strategy. We tell them, don't carry everything. They say, no, I'm going to lose it. Don't worry, you will not have any interruption into the business. The most used data set is something that you must carry forward, and that must be mapped with the right KDS. And we'll talk a little bit more about KDS, because everybody says that now I'm moving from ECC to S4HANA, or I'm moving from older ERP system to the newer system. But newer system need to have the newer classification, newer taxonomy, newer hierarchy. If it does not have that, then why are you actually carrying the old thing? I mean, it is not at all a digital transformation. So that's why, our philosophy is very easy. The tools that we build is that connect. It's not that I will give you in Excel. No. We will connect directly to the source, because then we know that whether, it's the right data or not. It's not somebody is throwing you the Excel files or the text files saying that, okay, this is the data, we must take it forward. No, connect to the source system, collect the data, consolidate the data, and then profile the data, look at the data maturity assessment, then move it forward. Otherwise, don't do it. Don't do it.
What's the more common approach that you see clients take? Do they start with a clean core where they basically start over without having much data brought over, or do you see more organizations that decide to take all that baggage, as you call it, that baggage
Yeah.
that needs to be cleaned up and fixed and remapped to these new hierarchies and all the stuff you just mentioned? Which is the more common path? Do you see a more common or more
The more common path is they carry the legacy. I mean, that's the more common path. But their intention was not, I mean, when they started the project, because we attend the kickoff meeting, they said that, guys, we are not going to take this legacy data. We are going to take only clean. But in the due course of, the decisions that they are making at a different level, who does not understand all of that? They, no, I want this one. I want this one. I want this one. And they overload and overkill that project. And that's where, the projects are failing. And they say that, guys, you should have advised it. We said that's why we are now writing in bold. Keep it clean. Take only the core data. Don't take all the baggage. I mean, I just yesterday had a discussion wherein I advised that, guys, it's only 40 to 50% of your data that you can take forward. The rest of it, if somebody wants it, let them create it. Because, Eric, it is better to create at this point in time with a newer version rather than carrying something. Yeah, no, I will lose my transactions. Don't worry about it. You can always map the transaction data because transaction data is not changing. It is an event that has happened. You just have to map it and take it forward.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, I'm curious to hear you here too, though. Like, what are some of the ways that companies can address some of these data quality issues and address the baggage that they have with their old legacy data? How can they address those data quality issues in their legacy systems before they migrate to a new system? I mean, what are some of the steps that they would take?
Yeah, we built a couple of models, Eric, because, it's a repetitive problem. It's not something that is, once in a year we are seeing, almost we see it. So we build models. There are two models that we build. One is data health assessment, which means that how good is your data? And we are not telling that it is matured enough for the target system. We are not saying how good is your data from a data quality. So you have all the data quality dimensions saying that this is how good it is. And if you really want to make it mature, which is data maturity assessment, then this is what you need to do. So that's the approach that we are. So it will fill all the gaps. It will take, it will let you consider only the relevant data. It will also, help you take the lean approach there. And that's the reason we always say that do a health assessment and extract only the data that will take you forward. And that's where, the maturity of that particular data set would be easily migrated to the future system.
Right. Yeah, that makes total sense. Here's a comment from Ram on LinkedIn. Says value of metadata for business process management and agility of decision making is the essence of PiLog products and services. Thank you for your
very good point. Let me just add something there. Eric, you might have seen that many people are saying we are doing digital transformation, but if you are taking exactly the same process as that of your old system into the new system, then you are not doing digital transformation. You need to also do a process maturity assessment. You need to orchestrate it. You need to augment that because it's the era of AI. And if you are not augmenting with any AI models or anything within the process and cutting down the timeline or improving the quality of it or enriching it, then why are you doing it if you have to follow exactly the same process? So there must be some augmentation in terms of the process management as well, business process management.
Right. Yeah, makes total sense. Here's a really interesting question that just came in on LinkedIn. I apologize. I don't see the name of the person that's asking this, but it says, how can organizations effectively address tech debt in their legacy systems without compromising the pace of digital transformation? And what governance practices can support this? And I assume they're talking about from a data perspective.
Yeah. It's a vast question. Probably, we can actually, give a webinar on that entire question. But so just to, address some of those things, the governance practices that they are talking about, without losing the essence of it. We personally say that go with the lean governance practices. Don't overcomplicate it. I mean, tech is there always to enable you, empower you, but your governance processes should be easily adaptable. The moment you make your governance processes, very complex, users are not going to adapt it. And if there is a complex process, then bring in augmentation part of it so that you do not lose out on even the take advantage of it. And if you don't take advantage of that with the augmentation, then you are actually overloading the human, empowerment there, and then asking the humans to do a lot more things which they won't be able to do it. And that's why these complex governance processes fails.
Right. Yeah. Makes sense. Now, what about speaking of coming back to data governance again and some of the pitfalls of data governance? What are some of the typical pitfalls in data governance during ERP implementations, and how can organizations avoid some of those challenges? I know you talked about the legacy data and making sure that you clean that up and revisit the hierarchies and the mapping of it and everything. But what are some of the other pitfalls that you see?
The other pitfall that I see is that stakeholder responsibility, and that's the common problem, because we say that customer data need to be taken care by the CRM, product owners, and if it is not being taken by them, again it's going to fail, because the governance, whatever you are putting in, they are the guys who will take it forward. And in the same way, if it is a supplier data that need to be taken care by the sourcing team, if it is not being taken care by the right stakeholder, then it's a problem. That's one. The second thing is also your accessibility to the data, and who is it that you are giving access to it, who is it you are protecting it, what is the data that must be mapped with which role. So it's a role based access is something that need to be. And many a times what is expected from the end users is to fill all the data, whereas the approver just have to only click it. I mean, that's not it. That's not the right one. You need to have a federated governance practice. And if you are not doing a federated governance, you are actually overkilling the process. So it's a fine balance. And again, probably for a customer master, you might have 3-level workflow, but maybe for finance master, you might have 4 or 5 levels of workflow, depending upon the sensitivity of the data. So all these things, I mean, we built a huge framework, Eric, for each data element, who must be the owner, who must govern it, who must approve it. Because, you cannot just say that, okay, let me just create it. I'm going through a governance process, system will take care of it. You also need human intervention, because, the taxations, any other regulatory compliances, and all those things need to be taken care. And you always need to bring in those stakeholders as part of your governance. And these are the general pitfalls why the governance fails.
Right. Yeah. Makes total sense. Here's a comment from LinkedIn. Great insights. Happy Diwali to the one celebrating. So happy Diwali to anyone that's celebrating that here today. And then from Alcinda, a comment from Alcinda on LinkedIn says, the scope of data to be carried over was a penny drop moment. We forget to assess the cost that comes with maintaining and storing legacy and irrelevant and outdated data during our digital transformation projects. So a great point there, Alcinda. And here's a question from Sarah on LinkedIn. Sarah says, you're suggesting that we should build the data from the bottom up rather than merge and purge. How do you capture the important data point in your bottom up approach? Through brainstorming, or is there a model that can be implemented? So how do you do that?
Yeah, it's involving the right stakeholders in the workshop. I mean, that is something we don't. And generally, the decisions for the data governance, our data set scoping, and all those things are made by high-level guys who does not understand what kind of data it is, because it is those data stewards that must be involved. And that's the right way, because they know what is it they are doing every day, what is it that they are capturing, what is it that they are facing difficulty with. And if you do not involve them and you say that, okay, I'm being a consultant, I'm telling you, this is the data set that you must determine, we fail. So, because at the end of the day, those are the guys who are going to suffer with it.
Right. Now, what about, here's another question that's really interesting from Kevin on LinkedIn. Kevin says, how does the integration of a robust master data management strategy within an ERP transformation program enhance data consistency, quality, and decision-making across the organization? And what are the potential risks of neglecting master data management in such an initiative? Because I think it's important to recognize there's really we're talking about two different types of data. You have your sort of your transactional data and the more granular detailed data, but then you've got your master data, which is going to be more like your product masters, your customer masters, vendor masters, all that stuff. Yeah. So how do you, when it comes to master data management, which is that second bucket I'm describing, how do you, what are some of your thoughts there?
See, now, if you look at the entire world, there are only two types of businesses. Either a company is buying product or a service or selling product or a service. There is no other business around the world. And the moment you are saying that you are buying a product or a service, both of them are master data. And yes, you could classify master data into a product data, item master, asset master, a lot of other stuff, and services into consulting services, other services. But those are the key elements of it. So you definitely need a multilingual, multi-domain data governance solution. You cannot just say that now I'm going to go with maybe product master, but probably if there are any augmented services around that, then you are missing out. And even if you're going with a product master, then you do not have the suppliers or the vendors, then you are losing out. And if you have, product master and you are a large organization, if you do not have a people master or employee master, then you are losing out on it. So there are about 14 masters that we see that are interrelated in a large organization, and all those masters need to be actually maintained. And what we are seeing now, Eric, the trend is, especially in the Middle East, is that everybody earlier have focused only on material master or vendor master. Now they are focusing on asset master because they are seeing that even though we have the material master as well as the vendor master, but we are still procuring. Our plant is 10 years old. Why are we procuring it? We are manufacturing exactly the same thing. It's the same capacity. Why are we doing it? Because they have not actually captured all the assets and the bombs around that and the maintenance tasks around that. And they don't know whenever breakdown happens or whenever shutdown happens, they need to buy a lot of materials to do that. And they need right skill set for that. So all that is master data. So generally what we do is whenever you are starting with a green project, we go there before even EPCs arrive on site. We say that, guys, give us all your engineering drawings, P and IDs. And that's actually a completely engineering work. It has nothing to do with, taking some of the clerks to do some data or massage it. No, it's an engineering work. We take all the documents out of it. We identify all the assets. We identify the classification of the assets, maintenance of that, bill of materials. And that's where we come from, top down approach, because you look at the asset and then come down. So from a master data management perspective, like what Kevin was mentioning, it has to be a multilingual. It has to have the augmented data quality. Eric, these days, nobody has got time to go and look at all the validations themselves. If you are not adding AI to it, if you are not augmenting it, then your solution cannot fly. It will not even crawl.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and it's that's really interesting. That's a really important point of clarification. So thank you for that question and for that response, Doctor. That was a good summary of sort of master data management versus other types of data that you might be looking at too. Here's an interesting question from Uday on LinkedIn. Uday says, "How can organizations assess the ROI of data governance initiatives as part of their digital transformation journey?" Is this something that you've seen in the past or measured in the past? Or
Yeah.
How do we categorize that?
Eric, it's a very, very tricky question asked by every management. What is the ROI? We must classify that into two types: tangible, intangible. Because there's something tangible that you can easily look at it, such as if you take the product master and optimize it and remove the redundancy, then you know that what is the stock and immediately you can calculate it. And if you are registering the vendors and then the vendor that is giving you with the least lead time and at the best price, you can easily do it. But there are services, the services generally, you say that maintenance of all the equipments, how much it is costing? Probably, $200,000, let's suppose, and what exactly are you doing? You have no clue about it, but you are prepared to pay that because you don't know what exactly that maintenance technician or a planner is doing on that, or an engineer is doing on that. So that's where what we did is we said that be it anything, you have a template for that, and you capture the template so that you can compare a service provider to service provider and then look at what exactly is the savings for that. So your smart contracts management, your smart service management, bill of services, and all these things will give you enough room for calculating the ROI. And then the other thing is that data quality, you are not doing it just for proving that you have a right digital system. It is to beat the competition. Today, if you now look at it, why Amazon is Amazon, Why? Because they have been enforcing these data quality standards for over a decade now. That's why Amazon is Amazon. And there could be other guys, but they would never come closer to that because the way they collect the data, the way that they, put down everything around the data product is amazing. And that's the reason. And what about their competitors? Probably they also have it, but maybe they are not doing it so much. So the ROI here itself is not directly proportional, but indirectly, your sales, your reputation, everything is good. You do not even have to look at the specification and say that, okay, this is a mismatch. You are not returning any products. And if you look at compared to Amazon others, there are a lot more return percentage is more. Why? Because you ordered for something, but it was not the right specification. That's why you had to return. So those are the things that you cannot measure at one point in time, but over a period of time, 3 to 5 years, you would see that what is the business benefit that you got out of it. And sometimes it is measurable, sometimes it is not measurable, but that's an advantage that you have been given by implementing the right data quality and governance.
It's a great point. I mean, it can be a source of competitive advantage. It's, data is an important asset. It's becoming more and more important to organizations. It's always been important, but now
Right.
with the advent of analytics and BI and AI and all that stuff, data is more important than ever. And speaking of AI, here's a question on LinkedIn from Mode. Mode says, can data management be automated by AI? So how do you see AI affecting data management in general? Data migrations and all that stuff.
I think it has changed already. So data management can be augmented or automated by AI, but not everything. That is something, if it is a product data, probably it needs a little bit of human intervention because it's a technical data. But if it is maybe a vendor data, it can be automated. If it is customer data, it can be automated because there are entity resolution models out there. There are, different ML machine learning models out there to identify the right customer, go and source it, check, your location, your other contact details, and all of that, because all that can be automated. Whatever human used to, take probably a couple of days to verify or validate a vendor, now AI can, give you that decision making within maybe a few minutes. And that's where I say that you need to bring in automation as part of your data management and data governance. If you are not doing it, it's not going to help. I'll just give you one example. There's a large organization where to create 100 records, they used to take 3 days. Now with the introduction of automation and our software, they could do exactly the same job in less than an hour. I mean, see what is the value that AI is bringing. Again, the decision is not being given to AI. AI is there to help you, improve the accuracy and then put forward, okay, these are the things. What is the decision that you must take? So at the end of the day, the product master or the product manager is making the decision, but on all the insights that AI is giving. And that's where I say that it must be a differentiating factor.
We're here chatting about data management and governance and digital transformations. We've got a lot more to cover, but first we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control. My name is Eric Kimberling, and I'm the CEO and founder of Third Stage Consulting. Before we dive too far into today's content, I want to invite you to learn a little bit more about Third Stage Consulting, who we are and what we do. I've included a link to a video right here that describes Third Stage in a bit more detail. It talks about our story, our history, our philosophy, our clients, our service offerings, and that sort of thing. But in general, what Third Stage Consulting does is we're an independent and tech-agnostic consulting provider. We help clients through their entire digital transformation life cycles, beginning with digital strategy, software evaluation and selection, all the way through and including implementation planning, implementation readiness, and the actual implementation itself. We're technology agnostic, so we only represent our clients' best interests. We do not represent software vendors. But having said that, we work very closely with software vendors, all the leading players that you can imagine we've worked with, both in helping clients evaluate and select them, but also in helping clients implement those solutions as well. So we have a very broad, objective, agnostic view of the market that is meant to really represent your interest as you go through your digital transformation. I also encourage you to scan this QR code right here to get access to our resource center. This resource center has a ton of information, a ton of ebooks that are free. You have access to top 10 software rankings, playbooks for how to make your project more successful, guides to change management, YouTube videos, all kinds of stuff that are going to help you through your digital transformation.
So I encourage you to scan this QR code to get access to those resources. And please feel free to reach out to me directly to brainstorm ideas about your project. Even if it's just informally, you want to bounce around some ideas and get some informal advice, I'd be happy to spend some time with you. So feel free to reach out to me. I've included my contact information below. You can also find it in the description field of this video as well.
The last thing you want to have happen is for your digital transformation to end up in court. I've been doing this for 20 years and I have seen everything. My name is Marcus Harris. I'm a software and technology attorney focusing my practice on drafting and negotiating software-related contracts and litigating software disputes across the country. Feel free to reach out to us at taflaw.com. We'd love to talk to you about the litigation process and what you can expect.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 197. My name is Eric Kimberling here with Darian Chwialkowski. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. You can also keep up with new episodes and see all the past episodes you might have missed, all at that same website, transformationgroundcontrol.com. So thanks for listening in. We're here with Dr. Syed talking about data management, data governance in digital transformations. We haven't talked yet about data security and compliance because you have two competing issues. You have one is data accessibility. You want people to have access to data and be able to make use of the data. But then you also, on the other side of the equation, you have security and compliance and protecting that data. So how do you find organizations balancing those two potentially competing priorities overall?
I think it's actually, first of all, it's a very, very complex decision. Why? Because every human being would like to have access to every data set and every data element, be it curiosity, be it authority, be it ownership, be it whatever you call,
Right.
So every human being. So that's where these CDO office, Chief Data Officer's office, must determine, saying that from the compliance perspective, from the governance perspective, from the risk factor perspective, that is where this whole GRC has come in, saying that this data element, who must have access to it and how much? Because somebody might have access to employee master, but not to the payroll, because it doesn't need to be because of the compliance and the risk factors of it. So the GRC matrix and actually plays very well in terms of giving the right authority or the accessibility for the right people. And again, it all depends upon how your organization is. And if you have a smaller organization, you would have more control over it. If you have larger organization, probably you will have very little visibility about it. But both need to be balanced. And we have seen during the migration projects how many times we heard that the payroll data it has been leaked, or somebody came to know about it, or even we have seen that somebody was training the data within their organizations and their chatbots were revealing the information that should not have been. So you need to have a data access layer, and that's what we always bring in. Data access layer is the metadata that controls it, the semantics of it, syntax of it, what must be revealed and how must it be revealed, even if it is revealing, whether it is a master data, whether it is, what is it that you are giving it back to it, whether it is derived data. So there are a lot of ifs and buts around that, but Eric, data access layer is must. Without going through the data access layer, you should not allow anybody, and that data access layer should set up the right authority over each and every data element, not even data set, each and every data element.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's, as you're describing that dynamic, it occurs to me that, we're coming back to a common theme here around data governance, where there's sort of like, there's the top-down approach to data management where CEOs or executives might have a certain vision of what data should look like or what data they do or don't want to bring over. But then the people that are actually executing the project, they're the ones that have to deal with the resistance that comes from, for example, it's going to be a lot easier for me to have complete access to all the data. Like you mentioned, it's going to be a lot easier for me to just bring over all the old legacy data, even if it's dirty. Because I'm used to it and I'm comfortable with it, even though it's dirty. I'm comfortable with it.
Yeah.
So how do you bridge that gap between what the vision is like at the high level of the organization down to the boots on the ground, the front lines, the people that actually want the data and maybe are going to resist the idea of having a clean core or taking the time to invest in cleaning up the data. Do you see that disconnect happen often from like top of the organization down to the bottom?
It does. And that's why what we do is, for us, it's the data stewards that makes, the right decisions. But we take all the input from the data stewards and we take that to the executive management or a board level or the C level. We said that this is what we have, really understood, and this is what we have discovered. Now, what is your vision? What do you want to do? Now, actually, I would like to, combine all of this thing into a shared service, and I do not want to have my data spread across all the organizations, decentralized. Fantastic. Then we will override the data stewards. We say that, guys, we are going for a shared services wherein, we are going to have people who would understand and handle multiple set of data. But if the CEO says that, no, let it be there at the plant level or a business unit level, let them manage it, then the decision is there. So our job is to study, during the discovery phase and the diagnosis phase, and we say that this is what are your practices. And now you have got, two decisions that which one you want to embark on. And it all depends upon the vision.
Right. So how do you see executives, like when we think about the executive steering committee or just the executive team in general, how should they be involved in data governance and data management? Should they be involved, or if so, what should that look like?
I personally feel that they need to be governed, because most of the executives, they say, oh, this is what I want. But if you do not tell them, if you are making this decision 1 year down the line, this is what is going to happen, and it will be a bigger challenge for you to solve. And most of the times it is because of unawareness they make those decisions, Eric. And their intention is always good because they also want to take the organizations forward. But just because they do not have the visibility and awareness and the impact of that, 1 or 2 years down the line, they make those decisions, be it, even bringing in the right tools or bringing in the right stakeholders. But if you don't do that, it's again, plan, check, do, act, that kind of thing. If you don't do it, and if you don't put down smaller things around it, and then, prove to them, you see, because of this governance rule, this is what has happened. What do you would like to do? No, let's go back to this. Or no, let us sustain with this, and then, push everybody to the corner and enforce this. So ultimately, they are the leaders. They are the leaders who are going to take the organization forward. So we leave it to them, but we will have to tell them, what could be the disadvantages or advantages of that, and pros and cons. The moment they know it, they make the smarter decisions.
Right. Yeah. That's good advice.
But Eric, maybe one in 20, you would also find that this is what I want. Take it or leave it. But they will call you back after 2-3 years saying that now this is not working, guys. Sorry,
that was a mistake.
Yeah, that was a mistake. And we see that.
Yeah, and I think this is a good, this segment of our conversation right now is a good, clip for executives to hear. So if anyone's watching and you want to share just this little clip with your executive team, I think it's important for them to hear, because I think it's, it seems like a lot of executives think that data is just it's a really technical, in the weeds sort of thing. And I don't think they fully understand the impact to the overall project.
Yeah.
I think they sometimes have a vision of what they think data could, it should be, but then when it comes time to execute, they don't understand the consequences that you mentioned, the things that might affect them longer term, or there might be a risk that they're not aware of or not considering.
Absolutely. And also, there's one more important point, what the executives are not aware of is the ground reality, because they are always listening in from a hierarchy and they don't do it. And, I'll tell you one great example where we were asked to take some data, 45,000 records of, material to the new system. Believe me, Eric, none of those 45,000 materials were ever opened. Even the boxes were closed for the last 5 years. And who actually discovered that? We discovered that. We said that, guys, what's the history of it? Last 5 years, they did not open. Why? Because they ordered the wrong stuff and they were hiding it from the management. And when the management came to know, they could at least make a decision to sell it off or, trade it off against something. But management is also, not aware of these kind of things, because your business units are somewhere, their offices are there. You sit in a corporate office and you do not have the visibility of it. But generally, that's the reason, a leader is actually walking on the ground. A leader is not just sitting in the top floor and then making the decisions. Unless he goes through that, he would not know what are those challenges.
Right. Yeah. Makes sense. Now here's a question from Darian on LinkedIn. What role does master data, or what role do master data management tools play in improving data quality and consistency across systems?
See, let me tell you, the moment you put down a rule for a master data management or a governance, whether that rule is good or bad, Eric, the rule will be applied consistently. So either your output is bad or good. So it is better to handle that rather than mix of it. Something is bad, something is good. How are you going to do it? If you know that the rule has applied and that rule has resulted in bad quality, then you know that that rule need to be reversed and it need to be corrected. You have a corrective action. If the rule is applied and it has resulted in the right data quality, then that's the working model. But if you don't bring in data management practices, if you don't bring in a policy, if you don't bring in a rule, then every person is making a new rule on the data set. Right. So that's why I say that it is better to have a tool that governing it, because either it will be consistently, bad or consistently good, but it is not, consistently inconsistent.
Right. Right. That's good advice. I hadn't heard that before, but that's really good advice. So as you look forward to the future of technology and digital transformation, this is where I ask you to get your crystal ball out and try to predict the future, but which is always fun and difficult at the same time. But what trends do you see in data management and governance, particularly as it relates to ERP implementations and digital transformations?
I'm seeing most of the data migrations are becoming semi-automated, which is actually great. Now, just to tell you that the ECC is going for a sunset in a couple of years. Everybody knows SAP ECC. And how many customers must go for Rise with SAP to a cloud? 40,000 plus minimum. Now, if you divide that with the number of days, every day there must be 40 data migration projects successfully completed. Eric, do we have the capacity as human beings or consultant to do 40 migrations every day successful for the next 3 years? Probably not. That's why automation is important. So the data migrations, the tools that we have developed, the design is complemented 80%, because you know what is the source, ECC, you know what is the target, it is S4HANA. And the transformation rules will not change because the schemas are fixed. Unless you have a lot of legacy, the customizations, the pain that you want to take forward, that is what it is. So I say automation is there. That's one. The second thing is that the data quality is a complex subject, because it all depends upon who is that stakeholder or a user who is practicing that data quality. And if you cannot augment that, help that with your co-pilots, and that's why we built a co-pilot, then why are we now calling it as a tech solution? It must not be a tech solution. It must be a analog solution. If it is a tech solution, it has to. What I'm seeing now, more trends is, Eric, and which is actually very good, because people are adopting this, and there are about 8 cases that have been proven worthy enough of complementing the data management practices. I really love that. And Gartner has published probably 12 of them, but out of that, 8 of them are successful, such as categorization, classification, internet research complementation, and then consolidation, deduplication. All this can be automated, and that's wonderful thing. You do not have to put your foot there. Only thing is that you have to look at the results and the process, whether it is correct or not, and move forward. And that's a really good sign, because if we have to, Eric, manage the data that is created every day, and it, how big it is, those volumes we cannot manage as humans. That's the reason we definitely need machine learning models. So that's one. The second thing, what I say is that there is more adoption for industry standards. This wasn't there. The more adoption for that, such as be it ISO standards, be it industry practices, be it taxonomies. When you are defining an asset taxonomy is there, which is as per ISO 14224, which is good. Adoption is there. Adoption is increasing for the standards, because the moment you bring in standard, interoperability is established. We don't have to worry about it. That's why standards are there. So tomorrow you are going to other system, don't worry about it. If it is as per that standard, you can move forward. So that I'm liking it really very much. And then the third one, the trend that I'm seeing is that everybody would like to have knowledge of data. This wasn't the case 3-4 years ago. Now everybody would like to be a data steward, a person with knowledge about data or specific domain of that. And this is data literacy is increasing, and that's actually a good sign.
Yeah, those are all interesting trends. And you talk about interoperability. And earlier in this interview, you were talking about how, the integration of data and how you go directly to the source. You want to connect directly to the source of data rather than relying on someone to put it in a spreadsheet or re-enter it. How do you, how does overall integration strategy affect data management? So in other words, you have data strategy and then you have your architecture and integration strategy over here. How do you bring those two things together and create like a more cohesive view of how it all ties together?
You see, one of the things people miss is always when they are doing the integration between two systems, they always integrate only the used data elements or used data structures. That's a wrong thing. I say that you do, A side all columns with B side all columns, because you never know what is it that you are going to change. And the biggest challenge is that if you do not establish an ISO standard kind of data exchange, then you are going to redo it again and again and again and again. 29002 is a great standard for industrial systems automation or classification or exchange of the characteristic data. And it very clearly defines, you take the full data requirement of the source and map it with the target and then leave it there, because you never know what kind of rule is going to come in place and what kind of mapping is required. So that's why, Eric, I personally believe that if you are not looking at the standards, you are actually losing out on the interoperability in future. And what is the biggest pain these days that I'm seeing is the integration. And is it going to go away? It's not going to go away, because in fact, it is going to be even more, because sometimes you need to now integrate the sensor data. Sometimes you need to integrate the stream. Sometimes you need to bring in, some of the social media data. And if you do not establish the ISO practices for exchanging the data, then you are going to redo that, and you will lose control out of it.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting, and it's such an important thread to think about too. How you're going to bring the integration of systems and the legacy systems where you've got this old data, the old legacy data in it. How are you going to create that integration, and how are you going to do it in a way that doesn't just bring over bad, dirty data? That isn't accurate.
You need to have a lot of filters there, and many a times we are seeing probably 10 different filters before we in fact look at the data, because those filters will actually throw out all the data. It's exactly like any machine that is working, the production machine. If the product is not good, it throws it out, and it's from a quality check perspective. And human beings will not be able to do that, and that's the reason we had to build in several models.
Right. Yeah. Here's an interesting summarization of what you were just talking about, Doctor. This is from Charan Kumar on LinkedIn. Says data quality management and data governance truly go hand in hand, creating a robust foundation that drives accuracy, consistency, and reliability, ultimately benefiting the entire organization. Their parallel integration is essential for maximizing data-driven value and achieving long-term business success. So that's very well. That's a well said summary of what data management is and how data governance factors into an overall digital strategy. So for those listening, just to sort of wrap this all up and to tie everything together here, for those that are listening that maybe are struggling with their data management initiatives, or they're in the middle of a digital transformation and they don't really have a good handle on their data work stream yet, or maybe they haven't thought much about it, what are some of the best ways to get started? Like, what are those one or two takeaways that you could leave us with as far as how do we get started on this data management, this data governance journey?
I'd say that let's start with the data discovery phase. Without doing data discovery, don't even go. Data discovery and diagnosis. Again, Eric, if we have some issues with our health, we go to a doctor. Doctor doesn't just look at us and give you a prescription. And that's what the data migration, digital transformations are doing. Just they are doing it. what doctor does is diagnosis, few tests, few checks, then only it says that, okay, you must take maybe this prescription. So I say that consultants cannot just prescribe before looking at the data and the health of the data and diagnosis of it. So check your data. What is the data that is really meaningful? What is the data, whether it qualifies for the data quality or not, and then start with that. Again, if you really would like to know about data strategy, you can get in touch with us, or you can get in touch with those guys who are in the data strategy world or data practice world, and we will give you a roadmap. This is what you must do, because it's a recipe, Eric. It is not something that you can apply on everything, but it is a high level recipe. We have a I vision data transformation framework with 7 different pillars, 7 different steps, what you must do in each step, what are the sub steps for that. Unless you go through that, you won't be able to actually put down a data migration or data transformation project for a successful journey.
Yeah, you need to start with that understanding of what you have. What is
Yeah.
the current state of your data, and what do you want it to be in the future post transformation or post ERP implementation? So that's
Right.
really, really good advice. Well, good. Well, thank you so much for your time here today. This was a great conversation, and we could spend a lot more time talking about it, but I think this is a good starting point, a good overview. How can people connect with you and learn more about PiLog? Like, what are some resources you could leave us with here today?
We have very simple website, piloggroup.com, and we are active on social media. There's a lot of thought leadership stuff that is coming out. You can search for Imad, Syed. You can connect with me. And PiLog Group has got a LinkedIn, other social media handles as well. They can easily connect with me. But Eric, thank you very much. I really enjoyed talking on this topic, and you can see that we can even continue for several hours.
Yes.
But because we both are passionate about these things. But I think it was a good conversation. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you again, Dr. Syed. That was a great conversation. Good stuff. It's one of those overlooked topics that we commonly don't spend enough time investing on or understanding in our digital transformation. So it was great to have you on the show here. And we're going to debrief on a couple of the points that the doctor brought up. Darian, what were some of your thoughts and takeaways from that conversation?
Yeah, first of all, I thought it was just a great conversation. I mean, we had a lot of great questions from the audience. And then also just a lot of the points he made was super useful information for this topic. But I want to continue the conversation and follow up the conversation and get your opinion on some of these questions that he was asked and the audience was asking. I want to start, though, kind of where you ended, in a way, where I want to talk about what trends do you see in data management and governance in the next few years here, and talk about what he said and what you think, or if you agree, disagree.
Well, I think the big thing that I would add to what he said, and I think maybe it's in his mind, it might go without saying. I don't want to speak for him, but I think, if I look at it objectively, one of the things he didn't directly mention, but I assume he'd probably agree with, is that data management is going to just become increasingly important, especially as organizations try to figure out new ways of using AI and getting better dashboards and analytics and business intelligence and reporting out of their current and existing and future systems. I think data management just is such a prerequisite, such an important prerequisite to being able to do those things, that data management is only going to become more and more important. And in fact, if you're, a university student or thinking about getting into the profession, I mean, data science, data management, all that is going to be such a hot area for years to come that I would highly recommend considering that if it is of all of interest to you. It's a great field of study in terms of data science and data in general. So I think that's the main thing I'd say, in addition to what he said, is that I think data management just becomes super important, even more so than it already is, as we look to the future.
Yeah, and one question I have to kind of follow up on that is, with AI in the future, obviously data is what is teaching the AI, and with companies potentially having personalized AI, if they have, data that is bad and feeding the AI wrong information, and they're using that information, what does the process then look like to then clean all the data and make sure that it's feeding the AI all the correct information? And how long does that process take, maybe, for a company to reset everything?
Well, like he said in the discussion, I mean, he alluded to the fact that, you have to tightly manage scope, or at least understand what the scope really is. How much data are you really going to bring over? Because there's there's a conflict and there's a trade-off that you have to make. And it's a hard trade-off because there's no good answer. There's no great answer, to make it easy. You either are going to bring over a bunch of legacy data that's going to give you more complete information, but that data is likely to be inaccurate and to have flaws with it and that sort of thing, which is why he talked about the other approach, which is to take more of a clean core approach where you're basically starting with a clean slate and, just starting over essentially. And those are two extremes. I mean, there's obviously a middle ground in the middle where maybe you bring some data over, but not all of it, or you just go back a couple of years. You don't go back decades and bring decades worth of data over. You just bring over the last couple of years, or maybe you just bring over the master data, you clean up the master data, bring that stuff over, and then you don't bring as much transactional data. Another option, we didn't really get into this, although in hindsight, maybe I should have asked him this question or thought of this question sooner, but you also have things like these standalone BI tools like Snowflake and Palantir that can kind of provide interoperability and provide access to data across multiple sources. That's an option too. You can move all your legacy data over to a data lake or bolt on a BI tool that can still access those legacy systems with that legacy data without you necessarily having to migrate it over to a new ERP system. But again, those are all trade-offs, right? You're just moving a risk around. You're not really eliminating risk. And so you've got to look at, back to what he said is sort of his closing next step. If you're going to get started on the journey, here's what you do. And he talked about the data discovery and really understanding what is the state of your data. If your data is in pretty good shape, then okay, maybe it makes sense to bring over more of that data than another company may find. But if you find that your data is just a complete mess, it's in a bunch of different silos, and it's going to take an inordinate amount of time for you to clean it up, to migrate it, to map it, to recreate the data the way it needs to look in the new system. If that's all going to take materially too much time, that's going to slow down your project too much. It may be that you have to sort of make that trade-off and say, well, I'm not going to do that. Or we might have to add more time and budget to our project if we do decide that's where we want to go. So I can't give you a good answer on how long it takes because it depends on how much of the data you want to bring over. But generally speaking, the more data you bring over, the more risks you introduce, the more time and budget and resource commitment that you're adding to the project. But it is an asset of the company. And if it's worth it to you, then it may be worth it to invest that extra time and money.
Yeah, absolutely. That's super interesting. And one more question I want to follow up on, I know that you asked him, was, in your opinion, what's the ROI of data governance initiatives as part of the digital transformation journey? So I guess that kind of plays into this as well. What is your opinion on that? Do you have anything to add on to what he said?
Yeah, I mean, he was talking about the tangible and the intangible, which is, I totally agree with you. You've got to look at the quantifiable stuff as well as the stuff that's harder to quantify. But generally speaking, I view data as something that's like it's almost like it's either gonna grease the wheels of your organization and give you more momentum, or it's gonna be like throwing sand into the engine. It's gonna grind things to a slowdown. If the data is dirty and it's creating all these workarounds and manual reentries of data and all that stuff, that slows you down and it affects you in some way in terms of how much you can sell, how accurate your inventory forecasts are, how accurate your demand forecasts are. I mean, all that's, you think about everything you need to run a business and to grow a business and to be more profitable. Everything sort of gets slowed down or gets undermined by bad data or incomplete data, inefficient data, low quality data, all that stuff. Whereas if you have good data, it can actually help you sell more and help you, manage your inventory better and maybe reduce attrition because you're better at managing people. I know we talked about SuccessFactors and HR technologies earlier in this episode, so that's top of mind as well. So anyway, those are just some of the ways where I'd say you look across the entire enterprise and look at all your efficiency and top line revenue gain or top line revenue metrics and whatnot. And you look at, well, how would better data and better data management, how could that potentially increase our revenue, or how could it potentially decrease our cost, or potentially allow us to process more customer orders, or whatever the metric is. I mean, chances are pretty high you can point to a lot of business value that you could get out of having better data in your organization.
Yeah, for sure. What a great conversation. Like you said, I think there was a lot of great points, and the audience had a lot of great questions as well.
Yeah, great engagement there. We had a great turnout for that discussion, and appreciate everyone joining here, and appreciate Doctor being on the show here today. So hopefully we can have him back and dive into more detail as it relates to data management. All that being said, we're going to shift gears here in a moment, and we're going to talk about what ERP software vendors don't want you to know but they're the things you need to know. So we're going to get to that here in just a moment. But first, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control.
If you are involved in any sort of digital transformation or business change initiative, you'll want to download the Digital Transformation Report. With its comprehensive overview of business and technology trends and best practices, this report is a must-have guide for any transformation project or executive team. Download this free report by visiting Third Stage Consulting at thirdstage-consulting.com. You can also visit our website to learn more about us or download independent reports, videos, and other best practices. Again, visit thirdstage-consulting.com today to learn how you can take your transformation to the third stage of success.
Are you looking for ways to promote your product or service to enterprise technology decision makers and influencers throughout the world, like the ones who listen to this podcast? Major Tom Productions creates media, events, and influencer marketing for B2B technology providers. Our productions are exciting, educational, disruptive, and effective. Most importantly, they create results. Our content is unlike any other in this industry, engaging, influential, and trusted by technology buyers and influencers throughout the world. Each month, our productions reach hundreds of thousands of targeted buyers and decision makers who trust and engage with our honest and tech-agnostic content. With long-tail viral results and engagement with our content, Major Tom Productions provides a way to reach your target market and create awareness, calls to action, and a connection with potential customers. So, collaborate with us today. Learn how we can feature your product or service on podcasts such as Transformation Ground Control, Journey to S/4HANA, and Journey to Dynamics 365. We can also feature your brand on our YouTube channel called Digital Transformation with Eric Kimberling, which boasts over 100,000 subscribers and over 2 million video views per year. You can also participate in our in-person events, including our Digital Stratosphere Conference. Contact us today to learn more. We can tailor a marketing campaign that works for you. We look forward to helping more people learn more about and become engaged with your brand.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 197. My name is Eric Kimberling here at Darian Chwialkowski. You can find new episodes of the show every week by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. The show is sponsored by Third Stage Consulting, and Third Stage Consulting is a company I'm CEO of, and we help clients through their digital transformation journeys by helping them with their digital strategies. We help them with technology selection, and we also help them with the actual implementation as well. We're tech agnostic, so we're not affiliated with any software vendors. So which is why we are able to have this next conversation, which is all the things software vendors don't want you to know. And it's not just the software vendors that don't want you to know this stuff. It's also most of the industry, most of the ERP industry, including the consultants that are affiliated with software vendors. They don't necessarily want you to know this stuff because it doesn't serve their purpose or further their purpose of selling you more software and more technology services related to that software. So we're going to sort of expose some of the things behind the scenes, behind closed doors that happen in the world of software vendors. And it's just things that you need to know to manage the risk. That's all it is. So it's a way for us to not create too much fear, uncertainty, and doubt in the marketplace, but it is a way for us to create awareness and a sense of realism going into digital transformations. And so this is a video that we recently published on my YouTube channel where I talk about, I think, five different things that software vendors don't want you to know, but that you absolutely need to know before you go into a digital transformation and before you sign on the dotted line with any software vendor or technology consulting firm like a system integrator or VAR, technical implementer, whatever the case may be. So with that being said, let's roll the clip. This is the things you need to know about ERP software vendors, but the things they don't want you to know. The first dirty little secret that you need to know is that software vendors set these arbitrary deadlines for ensuring that you move to the most recent version of their software. And this is something that's not new. It's something that technology vendors have been doing since the start,
which is to really migrate people along the way as they upgrade and come out with new versions. They need to move their customers along so that they don't end up having to maintain software that's super old. Now, where this becomes a problem, though, and where things are different today, though, is that in today's cloud environment, as these big incumbent software vendors are moving their on-premise systems to the cloud, for those that started off on-premise, that is, those vendors are now setting arbitrary deadlines for when they will stop continuing the old versions of the software and requiring people to be on the new version of the cloud software in order for it to be supported. For example, SAP has a deadline of 2027 for its legacy customers to move off of R3 or ECC onto S4HANA. And in 2027, SAP will discontinue support for those older versions of the software. Now, the reality is that is the reality of what SAP is going to do. But the other reality is that you don't have to do it. I recently published a video, which you can find right here, that talks about specifically SAP's deadline and what you can do to navigate that. But I'll summarize it here, not just for SAP, but for any other software vendor that might be telling you that it's time for you to migrate now. And that is that it's your business and you should do what you want. If it makes sense to migrate now, then do it. And if it doesn't make sense because you have competing priorities, you don't have the budget, you don't have the time, you don't have the risk tolerance, whatever it might be, those are instincts that you should listen to and follow and find a compromise that makes the most sense for your organization. After all, the project you're about to go through is not about the software vendors. It's not about making them happy or adhering to their needs. It's about doing what's right for your organization, and that's what you need to do as a leader within your organization. The other thing that software vendors don't want you to know is that there are third-party support and maintenance providers that can help provide the same level of support, oftentimes at a lower cost than what the software vendor can provide themselves for some of that legacy software. So if you find a third-party support and maintenance provider that can help give you a little bit more runway, help give you support when the vendor won't, then that's something you should absolutely look into. And if you'd like to learn more about some of those options, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to recommend a couple of options for you, depending on what software you're using. But regardless of what software you're using, whether or not you use third-party support and maintenance or not, the fact of the matter is that arbitrary vendor deadlines are exactly that. They're arbitrary, and they don't necessarily need to apply to you if it doesn't make sense for your organization. Technology is advancing at such a breakneck speed. In fact, in my 25 years of being an independent tech agnostic consultant, I found that it's sort of like a curve, a hockey stick curve, where technology advancements are speeding along and you think it's not going to go any faster, and here we are in 2025 and things are accelerating super quickly. And that is going to continue to accelerate over time. And in the quest to constantly be on the forefront of technology advances, vendors will oftentimes sell and market their solutions as silver bullets, things that are going to solve all the world's problems, make your life easier, be simple to implement, and all while minimizing your cost and risk. And the reality is that there is no silver bullet. No matter what technology you deploy, no matter how advanced it is, no matter what kind of pre-configurations out of the box you might find, there are going to be difficulties going through a technology initiative because it entails so much change and transformation for a business. After all, it's the operational and the human people part of the transformation that's the most difficult. The technology part is not usually the most difficult part. I'm going to come back to that point here in just a moment, so stick around for that. But the fact of the matter here is that we need to recognize that no technology decision, no technology tool set, no methodology, no automation is going to make implementations and transformations easy. There is no silver bullet. And by the way, every decision you make along the way has risks and trade-offs. Something might sound like an easy button, something might sound like it's too good to be true or that it's a silver bullet, but the reality is there is no such thing. No matter what decisions you make, no matter what tools you invest in or don't invest in, you're trading one set of risks for the other. And the key here is to be objective about assessing those risks and understanding what the risks are and what the true objective ROI and cost-benefit analysis of those investments may be. So just recognize there are no silver bullets, and that's something else you need to know that technology vendors will oftentimes not share with you. One of the things that my team and I do in our consulting practice is we provide expert witness testimony to attorneys. So when there's a big failure in the marketplace, attorneys will reach out to us to analyze, write a report about the failure, and also to be deposed and testify in court about why the project failed. One of the things we find in this analysis, in these extreme train wrecks, these extreme failures, is that technology is usually not the real problem. The reasons why these projects fail is more often related to non-technological factors. So in other words, a lot of times vendors will be accused of
producing or delivering software that quote unquote doesn't work. And the reality is the software usually does work. The question is, does it work for your business? And that's where the breakdown happens. That's the inconsistency between what technology can do and what actually happens when the rubber meets the road, when companies go to use that technology. So what we have to do is recognize that technology is going to be the relatively easy part. It's not easy, but it's the easiest part in many cases. What we find instead is that changing your operations, deciding how you want your operations to look, deciding when and where you want to standardize processes and operations, deciding how you want your organization to look and how you want to organize people, and if you want to move to a shared services model, for example, if you want to consolidate functions into one department. Those sorts of decisions are the things that are difficult, and they take a lot of time, and they impose a lot of risk on your organization. But if you're really going to get the full value or any sort of value out of your technology investments, you need to invest in those non-technological pieces, and those are the pieces that are the most difficult for most organizations. So despite what a software vendor might tell you about how great their technology is or how great their implementation methodology might be, just recognize that technology is going to be relatively easy when you compare it to the other aspects of a transformation. The technology industry has become somewhat of a nuclear arms race. We're all racing to find that next big thing, and we're all advancing our technologies much faster than any given customer or client can. If you look at where we are today and where software vendors are with their AI advancements and investments in analytics and business intelligence and automation and RPA, all this different stuff that they've spent billions of dollars investing in, they are way ahead of where the average organization is. The average organization is still back here trying to move to the cloud or trying to clean up some of their data that they've been hanging on to for 10 or 20 years. And we have to recognize that technology vendors are always going to be far ahead of where the average organization is, and making that big of a leap all at once is extremely risky. And in this process, in going through a digital strategy and roadmap, it's important to recognize that less technology is okay. It's probably better and more beneficial to your organization to invest in less technology, but invest in implementing that technology really well. So in other words, rather than trying to boil the ocean and bite off more than you can chew by investing in every sort of technology that's out there or every sort of technology that a vendor might provide, it oftentimes makes more sense to say, let's limit our scope of technology and let's focus more on the people and process and really get that right and build that momentum behind us so that we can then move on to other phases and more advanced technologies over time. So that incremental approach to rolling out new technologies is extremely important. It's something that, quite frankly, is okay, and it's quite common, even though software vendors might suggest otherwise, that you're putting yourself at risk or that you're falling behind the competition if you don't keep up with their technological advances. Software vendors will oftentimes pull out all the stops to get you to invest as much money as you can in their product, and that's understandable. That's what many of us would do if we were selling software. We would want our customers to buy and take advantage of all these great technologies and bells and whistles that our company has developed over the years. But the reality is when organizations overinvest in one software vendor, they're actually creating additional risks for their organization. They might be realizing some benefits in the form of having a common platform they can use across their entire operations. They might have some negotiation leverage because they're buying more software so they can get a bigger discount. Those are definite benefits. But there's also a downside risk. Downside risk being that now you've put all your eggs in one basket. In longer term, you have to ask yourself the question of what does that mean for the risks to your organization and the risk for potential disruption to your organization in the future. If you think forward, say 20 years from now, after you've deployed the latest and greatest cloud technology that works perfectly for you right now, you might find in 10 or 20 years that it's not a good fit. So the question becomes, how are we going to rip out this cloud-based system that we don't own and all the data is in the cloud? How are we going to rip that system out and replace it with another system when it's all interconnected and it's all done through one vendor? We also have to think about what happens when the software vendor arbitrarily increases their subscription costs annually. And by the way, there's nothing you can do about that. You can't negotiate that after the fact. For example, Microsoft just here in late 2024 announced somewhat arbitrary price increases on their cloud software that ranges anywhere from 8 to 17%. It's a pretty big increase for an organization that's investing a lot of money in this technology. And so you have to wonder at what point do organizations start to say, hold on, time out, we are done with the price increases and we're going to move to another vendor. So these are the sorts of things you've got to think through, because the more leverage a vendor has over you, the more likely it is that you're in a vendor lock-in situation, and you've got to figure out a way to mitigate those risks. So these are just a few of the things that I recommend you think about and understand about the inner workings of the technology and software vendor industry. I hope this has given you some guidance on how to
take the matter into your own hands and really understand the inner workings so that you can do what's best for your organization, and at the same time understand where the software vendors are coming from. I'd love to hear from you, though. What kind of experiences have you found working with software vendors? What are some of the dirty little secrets that you found, or tips that you found when engaging with a software vendor, procuring software, whatever the case may be? I'd love to hear your comments below.
So that was the video of the 5 things that you need to know about software vendors and the 5 things that they don't want you to know. But what were some of your thoughts and takeaways from that conversation, Darian?
Yeah, I think first of all, I think one of the biggest points you can take away from that is just a lot of things are negotiable for companies when they're going through these projects, whether it's the deadlines or the costs. There's lots of things that companies can take back their power from these vendors which I think is a great point for a lot of companies to know before going into these projects. I think another point too I wanted to talk about was avoiding the silver bullet mentality that you mentioned. I think that really resonated just because technology alone won't solve these companies' issues or their operational challenges. It really depends on, also the project managers and whoever is implementing the project and the CEOs, and both human and tech resources are really going to play a role into all of the projects. So I think that point was, I really like the term silver bullet. I thought that was good. So, but I have some follow-up questions for you with this. So first of all, when vendors push for upgrades to newer versions of their software, what are some of the most effective strategies to negotiate for more time without compromising the support that companies need? And what are some of the red flags that they can watch for when they're delaying an upgrade?
Well, I think first of all, it's important to recognize that it's not the end of the world if you don't have vendor support for your software solution. It's not ideal for sure. I mean, you want to have support, you want to have constant upgrades and innovations, but if you're sort of in a limbo, or you're sort of in a static system situation where it's not being upgraded because it's on-prem and it's being sunset, and so you're not getting new innovations, long term, that's definitely not a good plan. But short term, it may be that the risk of going through a premature digital transformation or rushing a digital transformation is actually more risk than the risk of not having support for a certain amount of time. Now, having said that, there's other ways you can get the support. I mean, just because your vendor's not providing it doesn't mean you can't get it elsewhere. I mean, you might have internal competencies you could be building to where people internally can provide some level of support, which you should have anyway. I mean, that's something I would consider a best practice, that you want to have internal knowledge and competencies and understanding of the software to where you can be self-sufficient in maintaining that software to some degree. That doesn't obviously solve the problems if you have a catastrophic break, or you need customization support or whatever it is. But it does get you a certain amount of mileage there. And so I think that's one thing. You have to look at the internal competencies you have and that you could build to help mitigate the risk of losing vendor support. The other thing is there's a lot of third-party support providers, companies like Rimini Street and Spinnaker support, companies like that provide, at least in the world of like SAP and Oracle and JD Edwards and some of these other legacy systems, they provide that third-party support, and they can actually extend your life cycle of support beyond what the vendors are willing to do. So you just have to look at your options, and you also have to look at the risk of both sides of the equation and really weigh those risks and, take the path that makes the most sense for your risk tolerance and profile.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to go back to what I was talking about with avoiding this silver bullet mentality. How can companies ensure that people and processes are prioritized effectively during this process?
Well, I think first, just recognizing people and process are so important. I think that's probably the biggest thing, is just creating that awareness of understanding at the executive level all the way down to the project team and the frontline level, the importance of people and process, and really sort of shifting the focus of the project away from technology and not over focusing on technology and neglecting the people and process. It's almost like a recipe. You just need to add, organizations need to think about how can they add a bigger dose of people and process and maybe a lesser dose of technology, because ultimately it's the dosage of people and process that's going to make you successful or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another part of this whole transformation and implementation of softwares is holding vendors accountable. And I know that's something you talked about. So what can companies do to actually hold these vendors accountable for promises they made during the sales process, especially if issues arrive post-implementation?
Well, I think, first of all, documenting everything, making sure you get documentation of, what version of the software were you shown in the demos, which modules were you shown, and just make sure you have this all documented so that when it comes time to sign a contract, you can validate, okay, are we buying the right software? I mean, that sounds simple. It sounds like a basic thing, but it's amazing to me how many organizations get something messed up in the demo process until they sign the contract. So they end up seeing one thing in the demo process, one set of modules or functionality or capabilities, but then the contracts don't necessarily reflect what they saw in the demos for whatever reason. It could be anything from just a misunderstanding of scope to just basic innocent human oversight, forgetting to include something in a contract or whatever. And so you want to document as much as you can and make sure you document as much as you can in the contract to protect yourself. And certainly, having someone that's independent, tech agnostic, that can help you, sort of negotiate some of these points is something that can go a long ways as well to help mitigate those risks.
Yeah, and with that, to, I guess, build on that point, but kind of switch to another gear, there's a rapid pace of tech advancement, which we obviously talk about a lot on here, whether it's AI or any other technologies or things that companies are implementing into their softwares or everything like that. How can companies balance the pressure to stay current with the reality of organizational readiness? And are there specific strategies or frameworks that you suggest for assessing which technologies are actually worth adapting?
Yeah. So I think, just looking at going back to your business case and really understanding where the business value is and what the cost and risks associated with that business value are, and doing a sort of an objective quantitative analysis of those cost benefits. I mean, that's really the simplest way I can think of to help determine which technology or technologies you should be deploying and not forcing on your people, but sort of using throughout the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. That was a good video. I think it's really important information for a lot of companies to know before or during their implementation or digital transformation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's stuff that hopefully it just, again, helps you mitigate risk and, again, having that realistic understanding and a realistic awareness is such an important success factor for digital transformations in general. So it's really important to understand those dark sides and those risks and those things that could cause problems later on. Because the better you understand that early on, the better you can plan for it, the better you can identify and mitigate those risks. And so it doesn't do us any good to hide it or to pretend that they don't exist, because they do. So it's just a matter of, okay, the risks are there. What are we going to do to mitigate them? So hopefully that helps provide that context for companies that are going through digital transformation. So great episode today. Thank you for your help today, Darian. And thank you to the audience for all the great questions. And again, new episodes of this show come out every Wednesday. So keep an eye out at transformationgroundcontrol.com. You can also subscribe to the podcast by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. You can subscribe on whatever audio podcast platform you'd like to listen to it on, or you can also subscribe on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, X, etc. All by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. You can find all the platforms that we stream to. You can find it there. And you can also go find all the past episodes as well. The show is sponsored by Third Stage Consulting, again, an independent tech agnostic consulting firm that helps clients through their digital transformations. The show is produced by Major Tom Productions. And if you'd like to learn more about sponsorship opportunities, I've included Mindy's contact information below. You can contact Mindy at Mindy at Major Tom Productions, and she can help chat with you about sponsorship opportunities as it relates to the podcast, as well as other podcasts that are produced by Major Tom Productions as well. So thank you for being here today. We look forward to seeing you next week on another episode of Transformation Ground Control. In the meantime, have a great week, and we'll see you all soon.